Hello, my name is Benji and welcome to Dice vs Cards. Today we again venture to the red planet far from the sun and talk about Terraforming Mars, still sitting at the tippy top of my top 100 games. We have convened here today, as promised, to take a sidestep to the previous advanced tips to bring you an imaginatively titled 5 more advanced tips to up your terraforming games. The last video focused largely on the engine building side of things, but today's going to focus on the surface of Mars, aka the bald state. So don your spacesuit and let's get to it. Number 1. So what can we do knowing that there are 42 global objective steps available before the game ends? Well, for one thing, it tells us that we will have less actions the more players there are around the table. And that should affect the tempo of the game and the way you transition from your economy to maximising your points grab. Now, there is no hard and fast rule about when a game is going to end. Yes, you could say you would expect a 2-player game to roll about 11 to 13 generations and a 5-player game more like 7 to 9. But if you sit down at the table with those numbers distracting you from what you're seeing at the table, then that's going to give you as much grief as just to reacting to what you see. You might have a play group that's turtling and focusing way too much on their engine and economy than what's on the board. So you've got two choices then. You can play their way and just try and do it better, or you can go full aggro. Now this will be slightly easier at higher player counts because of the number 42 we've already mentioned. Some players will respond and before you know it the game has ended and you've rushed to the highest points total. Long story short, play the people around you as much as you play the game. Number 2. Don't always assume that building cities is the final piece of your magnificent puzzle. Remember, there are no real guarantees with city building. All they guarantee you is some return on economy in the form of an MC increase, and they're not even particularly good at that for their cost. Think about the things that have to go right to get that super duper 6 VP city. Not only does it require forward planning, it can get very cramped, especially at higher player counts, which as you'd imagine also gives you a higher chance of being city blocked. The only way around that is to reserve the space which is unreliable or place them early game, which as I've already mentioned doesn't at all represent good value for money. One quick note of contrary to that is that if you've gone all in on greenery, then even after the oxygen is maxed out, you can still see some gains with cities when you're flooding the board with the green stuff. Number 3. We already know that there are 42 objective points up for grabs, but let's break that down a bit further. So there are 9 oceans, 14 parts of oxygen and 19 increases in temperature. So spare a moment to respect the uniformity of those numbers. But what's interesting is that the inherent cost of each of those isn't in any comparative order. Oceans are the outlier, in that they're in the middle in terms of cost, despite there only being a few of them. We can also see that increasing the temperature is the cheapest, and upping the oxygen levels is the most expensive, as you would expect from a normal cost availability ratio. We also know that these provide roughly comparable value. But that's not what we're talking about here. It's that when things run out, they run out. Encouraging in a very broad sense to favour the placing of ocean tiles early game. It's then a lot closer call in terms of approaching temperature and oxygen, but consider the tile placement bonus for greeneries and ocean adjacency bonuses as the tiebreaker in which way to go in the mid game. I should say that this is an oversimplification of the road to the end game, but when in doubt, it can certainly be used to point you in the right direction. Number 4 is a close relation to the previous point and centres around the global objective bonuses. You'll see on the temperature track there is 2 heat production and 1 ocean tile up for grabs. And then on the oxygen track there is only a temperature increase available. So the issue at hand is that not all bonuses are created equal. Now it's true to say that stalling and pouncing to achieve these is always a sweet I found a penny moment, because you're A, getting a little something for yourself, and B, ensuring someone else doesn't get it instead. So to put a fine point on this tip, you'll probably want to fight to the death for that temperature increase, have a good old dust up for the ocean tile, although there will be games when you've run out of ocean tiles by that point, and finally content yourself with a game of happy slapper for that heat production. In other words, pick your battles in order of importance. Number 5. When considering the competitive and take that elements of the game, there are two broad things I would like you to consider. One is how you rate the two main means of hindering your opponent's progress, either unballed or with specific attacks on a particular player. Again, it comes back to value. In smaller player games, think 2 or 3, you'll rate cards that allow you to negatively affect a particular player. I mean, clearly in 2-player games this can be brutal in a 1v1 contest, but the same can be said for 3-player games as well. Conversely, in 4 or 5-player games where that little orange board can get awfully cramped, you'll want to play the game of board presence and blocking with project cards like Urbanized Area and straight up standard project cities. We talked previously about the risk of overvaluing cities, but getting them down after the board has started to show some signs of establishing itself, especially in 5-player game, can force other players to scramble for their share of the board. So there you have it, 5 easy to remember board state tips to take your terraforming to the next level. That's it for the time being discussing Terraforming Mars. If you want to see more of this type of content, please let me know in the comments. However, that's it from me. I'll see you next time.